Hello and welcome to Canada. Welcome to Montreal, to the paddock and to Lawrence Barretto standing alongside me. Here we are, the Canadian Grand Prix and the weekend warm-up. How are you?
I am so good. It's so good to be back, Laura. I know I don't look like Will Buxton. Will Buxton, of course, is not here.
He's not here, no. He is, we sound like he's sort of gravely ill. He's not, he's doing really well. Will Buxton is on paternity leave and we know he'll be watching every second of the coverage this weekend, we have no doubt. So wishing you all the very best over the next few weeks and months to come, Will. He'll have a few races off and then he'll be back. We'll hold the fort until then.
Very much. See you soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Canada, I'm so excited to be back. First time here last year, so great to be back in this paddock once again. And excited for the race because it throws up a load of stuff. And we've already had the weather today. I've bravely taken my rain jacket off. You've kept yours on, probably sensibly.
I've less bravely taken my jacket
Sensible.
on. That's not a thing. But yes, love to be back in Montreal. Wicked city. The fans really get on board with this race. If you walk around town, they are loving it. The fan zones are heaving. Even this morning, we were coming in on a Thursday, queues of fans waiting to get in to do the pit lane walkabout. This is a proper circuit as well, so it's basically got everything. And like you said, the weather, we don't know what it's going to be like. Forecast for rain possibly tomorrow, possibly on Saturday during qualifying as well. We don't know about Sunday. Things can change here so quickly, and that's inspired some incredible races over the years.
Yeah, it really has. And we had a decent race as well in Spain. Lawrence opting to have a race off, a rare weekend off for Lawrence, but because he's an enormous Formula One fan, as well as an esteemed colleague, friend and journalist,
Wow.
He was watching intently and is now going to deliver.
I didn't pay you at all to say any of that, so yeah.
Anytime, mate, anytime. He will now deliver the 60-second recap. Are you ready? Off you go.
It was, in my view, a hell of a race. Great start, Max on the mediums. That allowed Carlos on the soft tyres really to have a real go into turn one. He hung out around the outside. Oh, it got really tight out there, but what it got really tight behind, because that bunched the field up, was Lando and Lewis made contact. Real bad shame for Lando. P3 on the grid. Had a great start, but he was saying after the race, wasn't really going to get anywhere thereafter. Further back, there was some real excitement because Checo was really fighting his way through the field after a disappointing qualifying. Made some really nice passes, damage limitation for him, he made it back up to P4. But the real story, I think, was Mercedes and their turnaround. Lewis, P2, George, P3. A real turnaround from that upgrade that they delivered. Further back, well, not so good for Yuki Tsunoda and Guan Yu Zhou. Yuki delivered such a great race. He's been one of the stars of the season so far, but he made contact with Alfa Romeo, and the stewards deemed that it was his fault. He got that post-race 5-second time penalty. Unfortunate for him, but great up front. Red Bull, Max Verstappen, both Mercedes, Lewis, then George, then Checo. Great result.
Well, there we go. Thank you very much indeed
Thanks.
for that, Lawrence. Excellent work. And look, we saw, didn't we, Red Bull looking mighty quick. Damage limitation for Sergio Perez, P11 to P4. And for Max Verstappen, a grand slam. The fastest lap. He led every single practice session. He got pole and he won the race. I mean, he's just in unbelievable form. And the answer coming in here still is, can anyone catch them? Can anyone beat them? And I guess Aston Martin, with that upgrade, will be hoping they can at least close that gap. But we seem to be saying that week on week at the moment.
We do, and I do think, in all honesty, they are starting to close that gap. It's just that that gap is so big. It's just taken a little bit of time to do that. Mike Crack just walked past us, obviously team boss at Aston Martin, and they don't like to say it out loud, but they are optimistic about the upgrade that they're bringing to this circuit. I understand they've got a new floor, and that's what it's all about these days. Bring a new floor, that's where the performance is. And it's the biggest package that they've brought all season long. How much of a step, I don't know, but I think they'll be feeling that the podium's back in contention. And how good would that be for Lance Stroll? Hasn't had that yet this season. Fernando's been dominating that spot on the podium. So I think it could be a really strong result for this weekend, these guys this weekend.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because they've been saying, you know, in the run-up to this, the upgrade is just a step. It's just a step. But I guess they'll very much be hoping it's a giant leap for Aston Martin. And for Lance Stroll, as you say, his home race as well. I spoke to him earlier in the pen, and he was speaking about Montreal, about the things he loves, poutine, salt beef, cruising around the city, how much he enjoyed coming to this race as a junior, as a young driver, as a young kid, and dreaming one day he'd be here in Formula One. So for him, a dream come true this weekend. A ninth gear, he says, the fans will be for him, the home support. So let's hear from our home hero, Lance Stroll, in the pen now. Lance, your home race. I saw in our sort of guide to eating and drinking and enjoying all things Montreal, you said a home race feels like you've got a ninth gear in the car. How excited are you to be here and to be racing?
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. I'm very excited. That's one I look forward to all season, coming back home, racing in Montreal. So it's always special.
And the upgrade that Aston Martin are bringing to this race, it seems to be the biggest yet, if I can say. Tell us a bit more about it and what you're expecting it to do, the impact you're expecting it to have.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's definitely, a step forward. How big of a step forward, we'll see. I mean, they're not huge updates, but every little bit helps. So I hope, we can, it can get us closer to, Red Bull, which is the top team at the moment, and in front of Mercedes and Ferrari, which is our main competitors.
And I saw your dad, of course, Lawrence Stroll. He said a double podium is possible for this weekend. Can you and Fernando achieve that, do you think?
Well, let's try and, make him happy and make it happen.
Great to hear Lance Stroll in such fine form, in such good spirits, and indeed excited by his home race and the prospect of it as well. I think it's an exciting time for him. It's good to see him excited and passionate, isn't it?
Yeah, and what I heard a story actually that he took his mechanics out for dinner last night. So Lawrence Stroll used to take Lance out for sandwiches in this store when he was a kid, and it was the same store that Lawrence Stroll's dad used to take him to. So Lance thought it would be quite cool to close that sandwich restaurant out last night, and over the course of the night, all of his mechanics could drop by and have a sandwich, and Lance was there. And I think that's just a really nice thing to do. We don't often hear stories like this, but drivers do this all the time. But I thought it was really nice that Lance was doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And a double podium. We'll see. That's what Lawrence Stroll is hoping for, is predicting. Who knows? Red Bull will have something to say about that, though. They're looking for their 100th win as a team here. That's got to be some boost, hasn't it? And look, for Max Verstappen, I spoke to him earlier in the pit and I asked, how does it feel as a driver to be in the kind of form in which you can deliver pole lap after pole lap, your bankers are pole laps, your bankers are lap records, you've got the fastest lap, even though you're flirting with track limits, you still just bash it out for fun. He must just feel at the moment that he's completely in control. And he said, well, I'm still trying to get better. I'm always trying to improve, which is an ominous thought for the rest of the paddock.
It is scary, isn't it, that Max is in that peak form, or at least he doesn't feel like he's at peak form, because he's delivering week in and week out. It's been in the top two only, isn't he, in every race so far this season. It's a phenomenal achievement. And I think often we talk about how, okay, it's all about the car, and if you've got the best car, of course you're going to win. But we've seen a massive difference between Max and Checo this year. Yeah. Max is just making the most out of the best of the car, and I think we're going to probably be talking about him as being one of the greatest, I think, at some stage if he continues on like this. And this might be one of the greatest seasons by a driver ever if he keeps on this trajectory.
Yeah, 53 points is his current lead over his teammate Sergio Perez. And that is a margin that a champion has never fallen from. So the 53 points, no champion has ever been beaten at that margin by the end of the season. So he's on course for sure, and Red Bull equally dominating in the Constructor Championship as well. Mercedes, however, did take them pretty close in Spain, and it was a really promising step for them in Spain. We know it's a circuit they love, we know it's a track that perhaps suits the package and the car they have beneath them at the moment. Do you feel it's a true positive step and a reflection of those upgrades, or is it a bit track specific? I think we've got pretty decent weather for them here, certainly.
Yeah, I think they've been quite wary about wanting to get ahead of themselves because they've had so many stop-start moments, haven't they, over the last year and a half. But I do feel when you talk to the team, when you talk to George and Lewis right now after Spain, there is genuine optimism that they finally turned that corner away from that horrible car that they've had to put up with, and that the change in development direction that they're calling it is the right way to go. Whether or not we're going to see that for sure this weekend, because it's such a different circuit to Barcelona, and Barcelona really suited that, I'm not sure. But I actually think fundamentally the baseline of the car will be better, and that will mean they'll be able to move through this weekend in an ideal world in a better spot. And that's why they're talking about, racing the Astons, the Ferraris, Alpines, and that group of 4 cars just behind Red Bull. And if they can do that, that's a massive step forward. Whether or not they're able to beat Red Bull, I think will be a step too far, but I think they're going to be in the mix this weekend, and that'll be huge.
Yeah, it's exciting, and they've leapfrogged Aston Martin in the constructor standings as well, currently sitting P2. So optimism, certainly at Mercedes. And Lawrence spoke to George Russell earlier on.
George, how much of a relief was it to have a good weekend out in Spain?
It was a relief to get on the podium finally. It felt like there's been a few opportunities this year that had slipped our grasp. Starting with Saudi, where obviously we didn't deserve it, but we got a taste of it for an hour or two, and then Melbourne, we should have been on the podium without the failure, and then obviously Monaco as well, we should have been on the podium without my mistake. So, it's been quite a contrasting start to the year versus last year, where sort of everything seemed to go for me at the start of last year, whereas now things aren't quite going the way we want. But Barcelona was hopefully the start of what's going to be a good run to come.
How have you found that flip around in form? Last year obviously went, like you said, smoothly. This year it hasn't gone so smoothly.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily form either. It's just sometimes you get the rub of the green and things just go your way without even really trying for it. And I think, I feel like I'm performing at a higher level this year than I ever have. I think my qualifying on a single lap, I've been faster than I've ever been. My race management, it feels better than it's ever been. Yet my results are a lot worse than they were last year. So it's just one of those. There's the challenges of Formula One, but these things have a way of making themselves work out right. And I've got no doubt as the season progresses, we'll get our chance and fight for more podiums.
Is this a circuit that you think should suit your car, and hopefully you'll have learned a bit more about the update coming here that you can keep up that momentum?
I wouldn't say it's a circuit that would suit our car. I think it's a challenging one. It's a lot of contrast versus Barcelona. Barcelona's all high-speed corners, smooth track, the hardest tyres. Now we go to all slow-speed corners, bumpy track, curbs, the softest tyres. So it couldn't be more contrasting if you tried. But we're going in with high hopes, good spirits. I think you've got to be adaptable to the conditions, with this rain around. It's going to be one of those weekends that perhaps the fastest car isn't going to come out, or let's say taking Red Bull out of the equation, the fastest one from the rest isn't going to come out on that third position on the podium. So we've got to be alive to it.
Great stuff. Good luck. Thank you.
We will see what Mercedes are capable of here in Canada, a track indeed in which Lewis Hamilton has won a record matched with Michael Schumacher 7 times. So intriguing to see how Mercedes will go and whether that upturn in pace and performance that we saw last time out in Spain is a continued theme throughout the season. On to Ferrari behind me. And it's interesting in looking at the two drivers and the way that they are speaking with us. There seems to be a difference in attitude, in optimism. I think Carlos Sainz seems to be more optimistic about where the car is, and certainly he, as we saw from last year at P2, he's good round here as well. Charles a bit more reserved.
Yeah, I think Charles is just generally more frustrated with how this season's gone, and I think that is playing out exactly like you said, that he's just got a bit more frustration, lack of understanding of why it's all going wrong, why from weekend in, weekend out, different things are going wrong for him and they can't work out why. And that's why today he was talking about they don't know why Spain was so difficult, whereas Carlos is a bit more optimistic. He's had the better run of the green, says. He's got rounds a difficult car a little bit better on occasion than Charles has. He's made fewer mistakes of late as well. And while that hasn't been the ultimate high that they want as a team, he probably just feels a bit more comfortable with this slightly edgier car. Or when you get to the limit, he can maybe hold on to it a little bit better or a little bit more consistently maybe. And that's kind of why you've got different opinions from both the boys at the minute. And it's just been very different.
Yeah, it has, and there is just a picture of frustration, isn't there, at Ferrari, that they're not taking the fight to Red Bull, they're looking over their shoulders at Mercedes and Aston Martin, or around them at those two, but also Alpine as well, who are kind of turning, a 4-team fight into perhaps a 5-team fight.
Exactly that, and I think that's why when you talk to, say, Carlos, who's maybe a bit more relaxed, and I got to hang out with him a little bit ahead of this weekend, played a bit of squash with him, and I won't tell you how that went, but it was good fun, actually. I had a lot of fun. He had a lot of fun, I think, as well.
I can't wait for this, because I'll tell you, I'm not going to tell you the result. You'll have to tune in on Sunday to the pre-race show to see how it all went down. But I can tell you that I have both played Lawrence on a squash court and I've watched him, because you certainly weren't going full gas against me, I have watched him operate, and you are a mean machine. An animal on a squash court. So I imagine Carlos Sainz had his work cut out. He's an athlete as well, of course.
Well, his dad is a former national champion in Spain, right? So there's pedigree there. Carlos is obviously an elite athlete. a high-level Formula One driver. I am not an athlete, but I do play a fair bit of squash. So I thought it was a pretty decent challenge to pit an elite athlete against me, a journalist, reporter, but sometimes squash player. So you'll get to see the results of that in the pre-race show on Sunday afternoon. But
I can't wait.
generally speaking, his demeanour, it's just really positive at the moment. And I think that's what I was trying to get across, is that Carlos is just really happy with how things are going in terms of what he's doing. Whether or not the car's any good or not is a completely different thing. Whereas Charles just doesn't have that same feel at the moment. Like, I think his character is just a bit down because he's had more of the tougher times,
yeah, he's had a
so
rotten
far this
run.
year.
He really has, a rotten run of luck, of various things going wrong. Yeah, it's been tough to watch when we know perhaps what Ferrari could be capable of, what Charles Leclerc is capable of as well. A Grand Prix winner, of course. Let's hear from him now.
Charles, really good to see you. I know it was a difficult weekend last time out in Spain. From what you and the team have learned, do you feel like you've made step forward in understanding where it kind of went wrong?
It's one of the few that, unfortunately, we don't really have an explanation for yet. Yeah, honestly, we know that we have a very narrow functioning window for the tires and also for our car. And we probably were out of this window for both the car and the tires, and that made it really, really difficult for me, especially in the left-hand corners. So, yeah, there was still something that felt off for this quali that we cannot quite explain, because the car was checked and it was fine.
Is that a bit of a worry when you head into the next couple of races, that you don't have those answers?
No. I mean, my confidence is always high, and I don't have any problems regaining it after a difficult time. So no, I don't have any worry for that, and I'm sure that it will be fine. Already on the Sunday, it was feeling, the feeling was good. The pace wasn't exactly where we wanted it to be, but the feeling was in line with what I expected.
What are you anticipating around here? In previous years, Ferrari have been good around this circuit.
Yes. I feel like Aston Martin will be doing a step forward for this weekend. Red Bull, they will be in front as always. Mercedes, I think, is the team that we don't really know where to put them coming into this weekend, but at the end it doesn't matter. We just need to focus on ourselves. It is a very special track, with curb riding being a big thing here. And the weather also, so it's going to be interesting, and we'll try to maximize our package and have a good weekend here.
Wishing you the best of luck. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, race pace and tyre inconsistency, and indeed inconsistency throughout the balance of the car, and it feeling peaky seems to be the main issues at Ferrari right now, and they are continuing to search for a solution for them. Alpine have had an absolute rollercoaster of a season.
Yeah.
You know, when you actually look at it, they had, of course, the double DNF in Australia, crashing out. Ocon had that myriad of penalties in the opening race. You had a pointless weekend, and then you suddenly have had 3 race weekends on a bounce, where they've both been in the points, and things seem to have taken a turn. There's an upturn in form, in fortune, and indeed in optimism and attitude as well, Alpine, and they're bringing more upgrades here in a really carefully planned out development strategy.
Yeah, that has been their style over the last year or so, is to bring those upgrades consistently. I think it's interesting to note that, and this obviously makes no difference, but since Laurent Rossi made those comments about how how tough it's been for Alpine and how they've made so many mistakes, actually they've been very sharp, and obviously they're not going to have just reacted based on those comments, but I imagine that would have had a motivational boost within the team for them to try and just do what they know that they can do. So it's been great to see that kind of turnaround. Esteban and Pierre have made the most of it, and Esteban was talking about more upgrades coming this weekend. Every time they brought an upgrade last year, it delivered, and that's exactly what's been happening this year, and that's what's kind of pulling them into this fight for P2, so that we've got 4 teams fighting for the second best car on the grid, and I think that's super exciting.
It is double points for the 2 drivers, Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly, over the last 3 race weekends, and of course that podium for Ocon in Monaco as well. We spoke to him a little bit earlier on.
Esteban, things have really turned around for you guys, I feel, in the last few races. Are you optimistic that that trend will continue heading into Canada?
Definitely. I mean, there's no reason why it can't continue. We are bringing some more updates to the car, so that's always very positive. We've been progressing super well in the last couple of races, especially on Saturdays. There's still some work to do on Sundays. We are not the happiest on Sundays yet, but it's a good moment in the team because we are seeing the progress and we can be pleased with that.
It looks like a lot of say there's 4 teams that may be fighting for P2, you guys, Aston, Mercedes and Ferrari. If you get the car in the right window, anything can happen. Is that kind of just how you see it at the minute and how you guys are approaching a race weekend?
It's super exciting. It's super exciting times, and you know that if you have a brilliant weekend, you know you can jump a lot of cars ahead. And that's great to see. And I hope Formula One we get more and more in that way in the future. But yes, like Monaco, you know, I'm aware that you know, if we have a great weekend, if we have the car to work well on Sundays, you know, that could be possible. But you know, we are still a little bit further back compared to where we should be on Sundays, and yeah, we need to see what we can do to change that around. We have clues, we know what to work on, but yeah, it's easier to say it and harder to do it.
Great stuff. Well, good luck this weekend. Thanks.
Exciting times for Alpine, and we'll wait to see if that run of form can continue here in Canada on what is a demanding circuit. We haven't mentioned the track just yet, and earlier on I was actually out in the safety car doing a few hot laps. Let me tell you, this is tough on braking. My goodness me, those braking points are intense. Coming into the hairpin, I was thrown all over the car.
Well, firstly,
I did not brace myself at all. I'm not a Formula One driver.
I absolutely cannot wait to see that feature, by the way.
I can.
I've heard great things. I'm excited about that. But I was lucky enough to have a hot lap actually around here a few years ago when Esteban Ocon was a Mercedes reserve driver. And we only got 5 corners in and the brakes were burning because he was properly going for it, obviously having a bit of fun. But yeah, it's so tough on the brakes around here. And I'm not saying that's going to be a reliability issue around here, but it will change the way that drivers will approach this Grand Prix. And also it might mean that because you can overtake around here, if you're good on the brakes around here and you can kind of manage them, you could really have a massive advantage around here. So that's why I'm excited about the race, because there's going to be overtaking. Yeah,
there will be overtaking. Tyre deg is going to be an issue. Strategy will play its part. And as we say, the weather here, I mean, it's pretty lovely right now. It's just a bit cloudy, but absolutely anything can happen, and we will no doubt see more rain to come. Lando Norris, earlier on in the pen with me, was praying for rain. I said we'd do a rain dance for him. I won't be doing that on camera. I will spare you that. But look, a brilliant qualifying for Lando. P3 on the grid. That contact with Lewis Hamilton meant that I'm just going to move us forward so we don't get taken out by this piece of machinery coming through. Lando Norris, P3, and then that contact with Lewis Hamilton, fundamentally meaning that his race was over, replaced front wing, and he finished way down. And he was so downhearted, and unnaturally so, at the end of the race, saying, look, we're the 7th, 8th fastest team. This was a reality check. And again, he reiterated that to me today, saying, do you know what? We are 7th, 8th fastest team, and Spain was confirmation of what we knew, and not in terms of we're going to get more lap pace, but in terms of the fact we know what the strengths and weaknesses are, and we need to sort it.
It's so tough for him and for Oscar at McLaren right now, because they know that the package that they've got is just frankly not good enough, and all the teams around them are bringing upgrades and moving ahead, and it must be really frustrating. They had that upgrade in Baku, but it was really only a change of direction rather than like a performance differentiator. So they're all pinning their hopes a little bit on this upgrade that they're going to bring at Silverstone. Again, it might not be that game changer, but at least it will bring them back into the fight, they're hoping. And then from there, they can build and develop, and they've got more packages coming. So really, in many ways, their season doesn't really start until their home race at Silverstone. And that's what been an issue, because if they changed development direction over the winter, they're still paying for that. And that means that their season's halfway through before they really can kick on.
Personnel changes coming in 2024, of course, with Rob Andrew, but I mean that will be a long way off for the drivers right now.
Yeah, I think it's good that they've gone and recruited from a different team. Like Rob's a massive. Rob Marshall is like a massive. That's okay, but he's a massive kind of force at Red Bull. He's been there for so long. And I think for them to be able to snatch such an impressive individual will really show that they're really trying to make it a big step forward. You won't really see his influence for another year or two, but if they can kind of course correct almost this year and make that step forward into next year, and then when the wind tunnel comes online and the simulator comes online, it's kind of maybe a transitional period, should we say. And that's why I think none of the team are really getting too worried at the minute.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, another team who seem to have relatively better Saturdays and just can't quite turn it on in race pace on a Sunday is Haas, and certainly Nico Hulkenberg as well. That was the case in Spain last time out. But there is promise at Haas, isn't there? And I mean, they're sitting currently P7. equal on points with Alfa Romeo. They'll be happy with that, I suppose. Always wanting more.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think always want more, but they have done a good job this year. I think across qualifying as well, Nico's been a bit of a menace in a nice way in quali. He's really got that one lap pace out of the car. Kevin's been solid again in the races as well. You know, Haas are always going to be trying to just make the best of what they've got. They know they can't really compete with the big teams at the minute just because of a myriad of reasons. But what they're actually extracting is solid. And I think then heading into this race weekend, another different track, it's exciting that Nico and Kevin are hoping that they can be in the fight, because it just means they've got a very consistent car across a number of races, and that hasn't always been the case for those guys over the last few years.
Yeah, and Kevin Magnussen as well, hoping that he will stay with the team moving forward as well. He's sort of stated that publicly, that he wishes to very much be a part of the Haas future. Nico Hulkenberg, for now, very much looking forward to the weekend ahead. I spoke to him earlier. We are back here in Canada. The rain is coming down at the moment. It looks a bit mixed for the weekend. What are your memories of racing here, and indeed your expectations for this weekend in terms of how your car may suit this track?
Yeah, great memories about here. It's one of my favorite places we go to. Track's fantastic, the town, the people, you know, the love and the passion we get here has been great for since I'm, came here, even before all the F1 hype. You know, this was always a sold out race, and a lot of support for us. So looking forward to get out there. Track-wise, yeah, difficult to predict. I'd rather just wait and see how it goes tomorrow.
Great stuff. Thank you very much. Good luck. Yeah, Nico not giving too much away about his expectations at all. I'll wait and see tomorrow. Thank you very much, Nico. That's the way of it in the pen sometimes, but they're going to be gunning for points. They're going to be looking for another Q3 for sure. So we'll see how Haas measure up. And indeed, Gunther Steiner as well, praising the team for the developments and the performance gained in the pit stops, as well as they entered the top 10 fastest pit stops in Barcelona last time out. So improvements made across the board at Haas. Alfa Romeo, some more personnel changes. James Key, reuniting with Seidel at Sauber.
Yeah, I think that's a big statement of intent from Alfa Romeo. I know that things didn't work out for him at McLaren, but he had a track record before that of really delivering good race cars. And I think if you talk to people in McLaren, you'll probably get a bit of a mixed review of what happened. But don't forget, he was working without that wind tunnel, the state-of-the-art wind tunnel. He was working without the simulator and with a slightly different technical restructure. So I think going into there, as Audi obviously coming in 2026, I think it's maybe one of many steps that Alfa Romeo are going to take, or the Sauber Motorsport really are going to take over the next couple of years to really get that team in shape, so when the works operation comes in, they're ready to go. One thing that I found out today was that Jan Monchaux, who was the technical director, is actually still with the team and will continue to be with the team going forward. They're just trying to work out the structure of how that's going to be.
Nice.
And I think what that shows is that, Jan's done a very good job with the car, very detailed in what is delivered, and they maybe need a group of strong people to really work. So he'll work alongside James, probably below James, and they just want to work it out. But I think that's really an impressive statement from Alfa going forward.
Yeah, certainly. On to AlphaTauri. And we know that braking issues continue to be a problem for the team, certainly for Yuki Tsunoda. And as you say, he was gutted to get that 5-second penalty and tumble out the points after such a promising race last time out in Spain. Here, as I mentioned, braking is going to be incredibly tough. We may have rain, and Yuki Tsunoda very much saying that I don't have the confidence in the rain because I can't brake, and that makes the tyres colder because I can't push as hard, and then it's a vicious circle. And here we may have exactly that issue he's been talking about.
Yeah, and I'm hopeful that they will have made some gains, but you're right, if you haven't got the confidence to really push the car, that's really difficult. Talking to Nick earlier, he was in really good form, and I think he feels like he's turned the corner a little bit. Yuki's been super consistent this year, so I'm excited to see what that AlphaTauri team can do as they understand that upgrade more and hopefully get on top of those brake problems.
Yeah, of course, Nick de Vries out-qualifying his teammate for the first time and really beginning to just step on, which we've all been waiting for, certainly as rumours of his seat continue to swirl. We move on to Williams, last but by no means least. Alex Albon will be the driver who has upgrades this weekend. He's very much been praising the team back at the factory for getting the upgrades on the car, an important step forward for Williams. I saw James Vowles earlier in the week saying that some of the facilities they've had, just due to a lack of funding, are sort of decades older than they need to be pushing Williams to where they are. So this is a positive step, it seems. teams?
I think it's great. There are another two drivers really, like the McLaren boys, who just haven't had the upgrades come in, and it's been difficult for them to watch the other teams develop in around them. So I think it is a massive step. Like you said, Alex, super excited. It's a bit of a shame that they haven't got it on both cars, but obviously if the upgrade works, they'll hopefully have it in time to have Logan to have it next time out in Austria. And Alex has been performing very strongly and very consistently. So with the experience that he's got, he'll be able to give that detailed feedback to the team about how it's operating over the course of the weekend. So yeah, bodes well for that team, I think, going forward.
Great stuff. That is almost it for weekend warm-up here at the Canadian Grand Prix. All that's left is for some predictions, and I've actually not thought about this at all. It's always sort of the last thing on the list, and then here we are, and I've got to make them, but you can go first.
Okay, so that will give you some time. So I'm going to go, I know it's not very exciting, but I just can't see past a Max Verstappen win at the minute. But I do think we're going to see a Ferrari and a Mercedes on the podium, and not the Astons that I think that we were talking about. And I just think because of the changeable conditions that we're going to see, and maybe a mixed-up grid on Saturday, I think we're going to see a Max Verstappen win, we're going to see a Lewis Hamilton second, and a Carlos Sainz third.
Nice, I like it. I am going to agree a Max Verstappen win. It feels inevitable at the moment when he's in this imperious form. But I will stick an Aston Martin on the podium. I'm going to go for a Lance Stroll at home.
Nice.
Look, I believe in a fairy tale. Let's get him a home. Let's get him a home podium.
Great story.
And then,
it would be.
absolutely. And then, yeah, I agree. A Mercedes on the podium, and I think Lewis Hamilton. So yeah, we'll go with that. P2 for Lance Stroll. You heard it here first.
Nice.
And that's why they're predictions, because no doubt they will age terribly come Sunday. Talking of Sunday, let's take a look at the schedule for the Canadian Grand Prix this weekend. Well, 13:15 we'll be back for all the build-up to free practice 1 with analysis straight after. That's 1:30 till 2:30. And then at 16:45, practice 2. And of course, 1700 we'll have FP2. Saturday, we'll build up to free practice 3 at 12:15 with 12:30 to 1:30 our time for FP3, and all the analysis coming afterwards. Our pre-qualifying show, that will be at 15:30 here, track time. Qualifying coming at 1600, 4 p.m. with the post-qualifying show immediately after the checkered flag. And we have got some unbelievable guests for you lined up this weekend as well, so do tune in. Race day, the all-important Sunday, our pre-race show at 1300 hours, and at 2 p.m, 1400 hours, you will see the Canadian Grand Prix and the post-race show immediately after the podium. Well, there we go. That is it. The weekend is officially warmed up, and it has actually literally warmed up as well now that the rain has stopped. It was very balmy earlier on, and it's pretty mild now as well. Thank you very, very much indeed to Lawrence Barretto for joining me here in the paddock. Of course, we'll have the sounds of Alex Jakes, Jolyon Palmer, Sam Collins throughout the weekend, and plenty of special guests as well. Can anyone catch Red Bull? We'll find out here in Montreal at the Canadian Grand Prix this weekend. See you then.